The VCT 2025 format has officially been announced, so we're going to be doing a bit of a live reaction to the video. I have not seen it yet. I have seen the images of the format, so I know what it's going to be, but we're going to look at the video and we're going to talk through some of the changes and look at if this format is better than 2024's. Which honestly, just going to say, it probably is. 2024's format was not good. So without further ado, let's jump straight into the video.
I'm Leo.
And I'm Anna.
Hello.
As we gear up for the grand finale of the 2024 season, we wanted to take a moment to talk about what's coming next in the VCT. We have got a lot in store, so let's dive right in. First up, right after Champions, the best challenger teams from around the world will compete in Ascension, fighting for a spot in the international leagues. These teams will expand each IL from 11 to 12 teams and have a chance to defend their spot at the end of the next season.
So what they're doing this year is Ascension is after Champions this year. I wonder how that's going to affect roster changes. I know that teams are definitely going to be looking at the Tier 2 system, players that don't make it through Ascension with their teams, and look at trying to get some of those players. If I remember correctly, for the 2025 format, it is going to be after Champions again, so we'll see how that ends up working this year, and maybe they decide how to go in 2026, but it looks like they kind of have everything set for now.
In October, challengers will pick back up with more competition, bridging the gap between the 2024 and 2025 season.
That is not a lot of time for the Tier 2 players to rest. I know people in Tier 1 complain about like not getting enough rest time or having too much rest time in the offseason, but Tier 2, with this format, that's a very quick turnaround if you make it to Ascension. Maybe that'll just keep players more busy. Maybe players will end up liking that, but I can see that one maybe backfiring a little bit. We'll see how it goes for Tier 2.
Now, starting next year, partner teams will be able to run academy teams in challengers. Academy teams won't be eligible to participate in Ascension, but we hope this change will better support talent development in the VCT.
So they can compete in challengers, but they can't make it to Ascension. What if you have a really good academy team? I like the idea of academy teams having the ability to, call up players from a Tier 1 roster very easily. I mean, I understand it on like a format level, because, having two teams of the same org in the VCT, if that ends up being the case, that sounds like a logistical nightmare. But even so, that just seems like it's going to be a logistical nightmare if Tier 1 teams end up having really good academy teams, but go off, right?
The 4 Ascension teams and over 40 pros coming up from challengers this year added fresh blood and new stories to our sport, including 2 teams qualifying to Masters Shanghai. We are very encouraged by these results and hope to continue seeing that trend.
It's funny because G2 was honestly the only team that ended up making a huge impact, and you could say that that was because of the fact that the Guard was basically a Tier 1 roster that just wasn't allowed into the VCT partnership system, whereas Gentlemates, they didn't have a good year. Bleed had an awful year. They were one of the biggest disasters in the VCT this season. And Dragon Ranger Gaming, while yes, they were a Tier 2 team, China didn't have a league before this year, so in my mind it doesn't really count because they were just another team that just had to compete in more tournaments to make it into the VCT, but it's not like they were super far from a Trace Esports or from a Wolves Esports. They just were an org that didn't get in right away. So I do wonder how much that talent dilution is going to happen as we move forward. I think the skill gap between Tier 1 and Tier 2, it was really close when we first started the VCT, and I think it's still pretty close, but I think it's gonna get more and more wide as the years go by. We'll see how many Tier 2 teams end up making impacts in the future.
The off-season returns with an incredible slate of tournaments, including show matches, open bracket events, influencer tournaments, and invitationals. Some fan favorite events are going to return, including the Red Bull Homeground, Ludwig and Terran.
Hey, Ludwig and Terran coming back. That's cool. Also, just a quick thing, the reason why I paused. I will be at the NA qualifiers of the Red Bull Homeground tournament. It's happening in Seattle, and I will be there. So if you end up making it to that event, it's not the full Homeground. Obviously, it's just the NA qualifiers. So should be a fun time because there's going to be some cool North American teams there, like MXS that Ludwig owns. So could be very cool, and very excited for Ludwig and Tarek. And while the offseason is going to be very long, it's going to be very annoying, I'm still going to be making content, so don't go away. But also, I think that the Tier 2 tournaments should be a lot of fun.
Now let's look ahead to 2025. We're very excited to bring our global events to 3 new locations next year. The first Masters of the year, happening in February, is coming to Southeast Asia in Bangkok. From there, we'll cross the Pacific and bring the VCT to the east coast of North America this time with Masters Toronto in June. And last but not least, we're thrilled to share that we'll close out the season in the City of Lights with Champions Paris. We thank you for always showing up, bringing up the energy, and making these events such special moments.
So in terms of locations, I think these 3 locations are pretty good. Having another one in the Pacific region in Bangkok, a location they haven't been to yet, I think that's a good choice. And then in the Toronto ones, the first one in Canada, I'm Canadian, so I am excited about that one. Unfortunately, June is a very busy month for me next year. I have a wedding and it's also my girlfriend's birthday, so don't know if I'm going to be able to make it out to that one. I would love to fly out or anything, but there's a lot of stuff going on in June. Especially, there's also a Austin CS2 major with that I wanted to go to. Probably not happening, but it was an idea of mine. But anyway, I think Toronto is a pretty good location, and I think ending the year in Paris, Paris is known for its big events. So I think those locations are pretty solid, and with them not having more than one in Pacific, I'm personally happy just because I'm in North America, and the start times have been terrible this year. It's been really hard to catch matches live, especially when I have a full-time job and can't stay up till, from 1 to 7 a.m. But these locations should be a bit more friendly to me personally. So I'm happy about them personally, and I just think as cities, they're good locations.
All right, with our events locked in, let's talk about the shape of the season. We have learned a lot this year, and in 2025, we'll implement a number of changes that will make our sport more competitive and more exciting to watch. The first big change is that we're expanding the calendar. The season will now run from January to October, better aligning the game and the sport, shortening the off-season, and giving teams more time to rest and prepare between competitions. To keep the stakes high throughout the year, every competition will award teams with championship points that will strengthen their bid for champions.
I was wondering if they were going to bring the championship point system back. I didn't love it this year. I think there's a much better way to do it than to just have it be used as a way for a 4th team at champions to qualify. Even if you didn't have a good playoff bracket, I think there's much better ways to do a point system if you're going to do it at all. In this caption, they say that they're reworking the system, and I'm sure he'll talk about it. But I also want to talk about this overall schedule. Obviously, there's more that they're going to show here with the kickoffs and the stages, but overall, I think this is a better schedule, but I still have some things about it. I think starting the season in January is kind of a weird month to start in just because January in terms of like advertising revenue is very, very low. It's right after Christmas, so not a lot going on in the world in January, which, hey, maybe that'll end up working for viewership because people don't have anything else to do. But I think having the first Masters in the middle of February, I think that's maybe a bit too early for the first Masters of the year. Personally, I'm really not a fan of the kickoff format that they do to start every year. I was hoping they would drop it after lock-in because lock-in was a cool tournament, but at the end of the day, I don't think starting off immediately with the bracket is the best way to start off your season. But it seems like they enjoy immediately having a bracket, so they're not getting rid of it anytime soon. It just feels like while the schedule is more spread out because of it ending in October, there are some points in the year that seem very condensed, especially like when in January are you starting? Are you starting it right away, like second week, or are you going to start a third week? Then if you're starting the tournament mid-February, that's like not a lot of time, so the tournament's going to be 2 weeks long, 3 weeks long for the kickoff? Probably 2. But I don't know, this just seems like a lot at the start. It just seems like points of this year are going to be very condensed, despite there are going to be more time to rest for players and more time in between events, which should work to their advantage overall. But I just think that start of the year looks a little bit icky to me.
We're reworking the system to better distribute points throughout the season and better reward teams for competing at Masters. More information on that later this year. To get the season started, the kickoff tournament returns in January, now with the new format. 12 teams will compete in a straight double elimination bracket, with the top 2 teams qualifying for Masters Bangkok.
That sounds like a seeding nightmare. Like, we don't know how these teams are going to end up changing in the offseason, so I mean, it's probably going to be random seeds again, which people are going to call rigged, even if they show the draw. But with teams that need a bit more time in the oven, a bit more time to play together, it's going to screw them over. I'm just saying that I think this can kind of hinder teams in a way that I don't know is beneficial for the league overall. But hey, you love starting with the bracket, Riot, so you're going to continue to do it.
Stage 1 will qualify the top 3 teams from each league to Masters Toronto. Action will continue on Stage 2, which will no longer carry over records from Stage 1, and will qualify teams for the final playoffs of the season.
So that's big. They're not carrying over the amount of wins from one stage to another. I think that's probably best. I think that ended up kind of screwing over some teams this year. T1 especially, they ended up making it to Shanghai, but because they had they only had 2 wins in stage 1. Their stage 2 was not very good either. But hey, maybe if they didn't have that really bad stage 1 despite going into playoffs because their group was just terrible, maybe we would have seen T1 at chance. That's just an example of what I'm thinking about that maybe Riot is rationalizing when they made this change. But I think overall that's probably the best way to do it. But we'll see how things end up working with the champs point system as well, because that will be carrying over, I assume. Also, I know they said that they're going to have more time for rest for players, but is this like a 2-week period, 3-week period? Obviously, we don't know the dates of everything yet, but this doesn't look like a lot of time. I remember the 2 weeks that we had in between tournaments this year ended up just really not giving players and teams enough time to get ready for the next tournament because there was visa issues, there was roster issues, all these kinds of things. So I don't know if they've really improved the amount of rest time that the players are getting, but again, we don't know the exact dates.
Playoffs will expand from 6 to 8 teams, which will keep more teams in contention for a longer period of time and give teams more chances to qualify for global events.
Great change. I actually love that. I think having 8 teams, while it might make the start of this stage kind of boring because teams have a lot more leeway, I think overall expanding your playoffs is probably a good idea. Just please, I'm begging you, take away the bye rounds. Stop with the bye rounds. Stop having the top 2 seeds have an immediate win and immediate bye into the next round. Stop all that. Just do a regular seeded bracket. 1 versus 8, 2 versus 7, 3 versus 6, 4 versus 5. For the love of God, please just do that. Maybe not everybody's going to agree with that perspective of me, but that's how I think it should be done. I don't think we should have bye rounds. I think they're dumb.
And finally, to close out the season, the top teams from Stage 2 playoffs and the top teams with the most championship points will qualify for Champions Paris, where we will crown the best Valorant team in the world.
Looking further into the future, 2026 will bring champions to China, and in 2027, back to the Americas.
That's it, folks. 2025 promises to be a truly incredible year. We'll have a longer season, more teams in our leagues, a new format, new skins, events in new locations around the world, and of course, the celebration of Valorant's 5th anniversary.
Thank you for your support, your passion, and for making Valorant the amazing game that it is.
Okay, so I'm just going back to this screen because this is the most important thing. I'm not going to go through everything, but we already talked about how the VCT is going to work challengers. Very interested to see how this ends up working, especially with it starting pretty quickly after Ascension. But it looks like Riot wants a Tier 2 system to be kind of a bridge between the off-season and the regular VCT season, having more challengers events during the off-season for the VCT, probably best in terms of maintaining interest in the esport. Obviously, Game Changers getting their event in November, that should be decent because that'll be shortly after Champions. I think that's a good decision there. I don't know if the Ascension and Champions, them being in the same block is going to end up meaning that they're going to be crossing over with each other, because I don't think that'd be a good idea, because that would just kill Ascension viewership. But we don't know what the dates are, so maybe it'll end up being right after or something. I don't know. That seems like might be a bit of a conflict. But overall, I think this format is a lot better than last year. Obviously, the online reaction has been mixed because it is with everything, but I do think that this is better than the 2024 format. The 2024 format was just a mess. We had 11 teams per region. There was a championship point system that was just introduced, and I don't think it's been optimized. We'll see if the changes to that ends up being better. I don't know yet, but overall, I'm excited. I think the schedule being longer is going to be good. I think having more breathing room for players is going to be solid as well, and I would definitely make changes to this, but I understand what Riot's doing here. I think this is pretty good. We'll see how it ends up working. So that is the video. I'll be making a deeper dive on what I think the format should be. I'll be making my own template for that, what I think would be the ideal situation for the VCT, but I think for now, we got something pretty good. Please let me know in the comments section down below what you think of the 2025 format. Is it better than 2024, or is it somehow worse? Please click like and subscribe if you enjoyed the video. Thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Bye.